Hey friends, I want to thank our sponsor, Raygun. Are you struggling to replicate the bugs and performance issues that your customers are reporting? Plug Raygun into your web and mobile applications right now and diagnose problems in minutes rather than hours. Kiss goodbye having to dig through log files and relying on frustrated users to report issues. Make your software development life so much easier using Raygun's error, crash, and performance monitoring tools. Every software team can create flawless software experiences for their customers with Raygun. Try it free today at raygun.com. That's RAYGUN.com. Hi, this is Scott Hansel, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Bryan Liles. He's a senior software engineer at VMware. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am getting there. I'm well blessed. I have a podcast, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I get to talk to people like you, which is pretty cool as well. You have had a couple of pretty good tweets lately that have got me thinking, where you talk about leveling up, like the secret to being an engineer and the secret to being this level or that level. But you've talked about what it means to be a complete engineer. What does that mean, a complete engineer? Am I an incomplete engineer?
No. One day maybe I'll write a book about this, but I'll start here.
Mm-hmm.
I have these rules to life because I realize that I can't fake it till I make it. I have anxiety, so I have to have rules for everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
So rule number one is there's a competition going on out there, and you're the only person in this competition. You can only compete against yourself. You can't compete against anyone else. You can watch what other people do. You could enjoy it. You can try to emulate it, but you could only do it to your ability. And to someone with anxiety, like an anxiety disorder that I have, what it does is it allows me to compare myself to myself, which means that I can at least get to where I was before and maybe top it. But, comparing myself in a vacuum to, let's say, someone like Scott Hanselman, who is super popular, I would never compare myself to you. So that's rule number one. And then when it comes to being a complete developer, what I think about it is two different things. So there is you, the developer, the person who is basically writing software for money for somebody, either for yourself or someone else, but writing software for money. And then there's you, the developer, who is providing an impact on the world. And that impact can be a couple of different things. It can be you're helping other developers level up, or you're providing a good role model for people, or, even better yet, you're just not causing any problems. Because sometimes you get tired and you
Do
just
no
don't want
harm.
to do anything else. Yeah, just do no harm, literally. These rules that I use, and these guide how I approach life. Because I'll tell you, it's interesting. I didn't grow up in a way that I thought I'd be a software developer for money. We weren't poor. We definitely weren't poor. My father was in the military, but we weren't rich, like far from it. And the people that I saw were mostly blue collar and some good, some bad. Some of them are still living. Some of them are not still living. Some of them are in jail, or some of them were in jail. So I didn't see myself. I saw myself as, just trying to do the right thing to make the best situation, have a better life than my parents. That was my dream. The crazy thing is that now, as an adult, what I'm trying to do is share those lessons that I've learned and show people that what I've done in life is not a fluke. It's very purposeful. There was some luck, but a lot of these opportunities, I put myself in that position. And when I see people out there on Twitter, it's my favorite part of Twitter, where they get on there and they're like, "Hey, y'all, I got my first job and I'm a software developer." And I'm like, "Yay, that's amazing." And I always like it. I'll go look at their history and maybe I'll follow them. But that's what makes that's the kind of world that I want to live in, where we're trying our best, but we're also looking at people behind us trying their best as well.
I've always tried to remind myself how I got up the ladder and then try to figure out how I'm going to pull people up the ladder, with me. because there's lots of different things that made the rungs on the ladder and made those rungs possible. It can be, like you said, luck. It can be being prepared when the luck happened. We always talk about opportunity being luck plus being prepared. When people tweet about that stuff online and they say, I did this or I did that, do you ever think about their journey, how they got there, how hard it was? Because we don't know. We just saw the tweet. It was a very small tweet.
Well, that was something I had to learn for a long time. As of January, I've been on Twitter for 13 years, something like that. I think I joined
Twitter's
in 2007.
Cool now.
You know what? I don't care. I'm a grown man. I like what I like. It doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to be cool. But let me stop. but really, wow. Let's rewind this a little bit. Let me unpack this a little bit. You are always going to see somebody who is doing better than you. I mean, I want to be president like Barack Obama. That seemed like a pretty cool gig until you see his hair color from when he got in to when he left. Maybe that's not a cool gig. But bringing it more closer to tech, I've seen people who've written software and I've used it. And then I looked at it. I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then I go look at the source and I'm like, well, I could have wrote this. Yeah. So that's the secret, is that we like to put people on pedestals as people who are doing great things in the game. But, really what you have to do every single time is congratulate them. Mm-hmm. Like my rule number 1, don't compare yourself to somebody else. And understand that you're only seeing what might be the best that they'll ever be. Like they got this one thing that one time that you saw at 2:35 on Twitter 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And, we're both over 40. That's a lot of time to just wait for that particular thing. Mm-hmm. So what you have to do is you have to go make them moments for yourself. And that's the hard piece.
There was a tweet today from Ed Williams. He said, Disney released a major streaming service that's playing more errors than contents, and we're all still here. You need to launch that imperfect thing that you've been sitting on for months, sis. I just love that tweet. It's just a perfect little tweet right there. Like all those people that we look up to, the thing that they made, that imperfect thing that we all use, they did it though. They put it out there.
Yeah, but real talk, Disney signed up 10 million customers yesterday. Have you ever done that? Think about that.
I definitely said hug ops to our friends at Disney who are struggling with that. But I kind of like the romance of it, though. The idea that, it's not perfect. I mean, sure, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty fantastic. But yeah, maybe they would have signed up 12 million if it hadn't been a problem.
Right. But I will just tell you, right before this podcast, I was down in my theater watching Mandalorian.
It was worth it.
It didn't skip a beat. Not. I didn't understand any of it. I was like, I don't understand this, but I'm intrigued and I'll be back.
Oh, well, we need to have a whole show just about unpacking the Mandalorian, because that I'm ready to do frame by frame analysis. I very much enjoyed that.
Yeah. There was a lot going on in there. So, but understand it though, that the success that you see may have been something that took, weeks or months or years to make. Exactly. And it could have only been like a one-time thing. So why are you setting yourself up to fail for something that is not sustainable? At least not for yourself, because you ain't put in the work. So you gotta you can't have envy, and but you can definitely appreciate what people are doing, and then realize that this is a big world. And then our tech ecosystem is huge. There's so much money out there. Everyone should have the chance to go get their shine, but forces doesn't make that possible. But it's out there.
Why do we choose though to set up these failure systems? This idea that I'm sitting here in my little house in Portland, Oregon, and I'm salty that Ryan Reynolds has my comedy career. I didn't do the sit-ups, and I don't have the hair, but still, I'm mad at this man.
Yeah, but guess what? You didn't do.
I didn't.
You didn't do the comedy club. You didn't do the comedy clubs. You didn't do the comedy clubs.
I did for a minute, but I wasn't good at it. That's also a problem.
Right. He probably got booed his first time too. Yeah, but he kept with it. And it doesn't help that he's good looking and he's Canadian.
Canadian plus Canadians. 2 charisma right there.
Right. And he made Van Wilder.
I didn't make Van Wilder.
That movie was...
I know. There's so many...
You didn't make Van Wilder.
But I set myself up, and I sit here and I'm sad about that. So what do we do to lift up the people who are listening to this show? And they're like, man, I wish I could get on Bryan Liles' level. He's doing all this cool stuff, making all this great open source software. How do we set
All
them up for
right.
success?
Well, understand that, like, we'll talk about this open source, my newest open source, but that was a year journey. We started that project in like September of last year, and I didn't talk about it until August of this year.
Wow.
And they'll understand that it might look neat on the outside, but it's not complete because it's a hard problem.
Mm.
But it's good enough that I can show people, and I'm fairly certain you won't lose any data. Like pretty certain you won't lose any data. And that was the important piece to me. Will anybody lose data? No. All right, we'll ship it. But how did I get there? Well, the problem that I think a lot of people do, or a lot of people run into, is that you want to swing your little baseball bat, whatever your software thing is, and you want to say, well, I'm going to hit a triple home run, not even like a normal home run. You want to get around the base 3 times. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. You can't do that. And then you're like, all right, well, maybe I'll just hit a single. Well, guess what? You don't even know how to hold the bat. So first of all, learn how to hold the bat. So what have I been doing? And actually, I'll tell you about the project now. So recently, back in, I guess, August, I released a project open source called Octant. And what Octant is, it's a console that runs in your browser right now for Kubernetes that shows what's going on in your cluster. And let me break that down. Kubernetes is this kind of neat way that we can take multiple computers, make them look like they're one, and run our software on them. That's very simple. And the problem is that, notice I just said multiple computers. Imagine all the problems you got: many disks and networks and this and that. Kubernetes ultimately will make that simpler. But the problem is because Kubernetes contains so much complexity, it exposes a lot of complexity as well. So as a developer who wants to ship some software, like I got this website and maybe this microservice or something, um, having to learn Kubernetes is tough. So we created Octant to make that easier. And this is something that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people will be like, well, I want this dashboard that shows everything. Our first premise was, well, we have this application or group of applications running in Kubernetes. Can we figure out how to tell users if something's broken? And then can we show how everything is organized together? And then from there, when we solved that problem, then we were able to work backwards to figure out the details that were missing in the gaps. And that is actually what made the product. So many times we start off trying to make a product and we're going to it's going to have this feature and this feature and this feature. And the problem with that is that everyone has a friend who talks too much and tells horrible stories. You never want to talk to that friend. You want to talk to that friend who tells the really dope stories, but they're always very simple. And that's the same thing with software. You got to start off simple. You can really only do one thing at a time. And that's actually how I actually live life. It's like you can only do one thing at a time. Like I'm on this podcast right now. I can't be on Twitter. Or I'm writing software. I can't be looking at my Outlook. Or I'm looking at Outlook. Hide the software. Or only work on one software project. Or even better yet, when I'm in there, I can solve one problem at a time. If I'm not solving, I write it down. And that's it. And it's kind of mundane, but I can repeat that forever and ever and ever and then solve bigger and bigger problems.
Hey folks, I'm taking this episode to advertise for other podcasts. If you enjoy stories about the people behind the technology that we use, you should check out the Greater Than Code podcast. They focus on the human side of software development with stories of diversity and inclusion, accessibility from people that you don't normally hear from. Search for Greater Than Code in your favorite podcast app or check out greaterthancode.com. Do you think that people who are getting started in software are trying to do the most too soon?
Well, the problem is they see, well, I want to create these websites, so you need to learn React. Well, first of all, React is hard. First of all, and this is crazy, and I think some of our boot camps have this problem, is that it's like when you're teaching a child, I can teach a child a whole bunch of big words, but if they don't understand what that big word is, they have no context around the word. They just know the word. And I think a lot of this happens with teaching web development. We teach React and we teach JSX, or we teach Angular and we teach observables from RxJS, or we teach Vue. But what we really need to do is go back to thinking, well, what is a web application? Well, it runs in the DOM. All right, well, how does the DOM work?
See,
Explain
that's even
that.
too high level right there. Like,
Oh,
you lost me there. Like, do they even like? I wrote on GeoCities, and I didn't know about the DOM until 10 years ago.
but what I'm trying to say is that we need to go
Mm.
backwards. We need to get people. So what I used to ask developers about RFCs when we talked about RFCs, and I'd always ask about the HTTP RFC, and they're like, "Well, what's that?" I'm like, "Well, you're a web developer, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "You don't understand how HTTP works?" Well, like, "Yeah, we have GET, POST." I'm like, "No, no, no. Do you understand how it works? Like, do you understand how the protocol
Mm.
works? You might not have to write it, but when you understand the semantics of it, it's like English. I know a whole bunch of little words and I can make bigger sentences. Well, then I can learn bigger words and make even more complex sentences. And then I realized that, hey, maybe the little words were better.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this though. Sometimes, I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I don't want to be someone that says you don't get to do this until you do that. I don't want to do that whole like one true Scotsman kind of like style of stuff. But at the same time, the older I get, the more I get back to fundamentals. I just did a YouTube video that was an experiment, and I think it's going to become a series where I spent basically 20 minutes talking about carriage return line feed. And people really liked it. They thought it was pretty cool. Now, I wouldn't say it was a requirement, but I think that you are a better driver when you can drive a stick shift before you start taking an Uber. But other people are like, well, not everybody wants to drive a stick shift. Maybe I just want to take an Uber. So then am I a gatekeeper to driving? Because I think that people ought to know how to change a tire and, change their oil once before they take an Uber.
So I'm actually not even looking at it as gatekeeping. I'm just telling you the problems that I ran
Mm.
into and how I think you could learn it. Do what you
No, I
want,
appreciate that. I get that.
but at the end of the day, whenever you're still spinning your wheels and you're not progressing,
Mm.
you then need to ask yourself, am I smarter than this problem that I know nothing about? And all I'm doing is throwing out a little bit of guidance because it literally cost me nothing to tell you this.
Okay.
And that's how I look at it.
There's a thing that I've been learning about. I've been using this term for many, many years where I talk about being intentional and intentionality. And I've talked about it on podcasts, and I've taught classes on it. And then I discovered that all this time, what I've been thinking about things in terms of being intentional is actually a thing that someone else came up with called deliberate practice. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I think I've heard of this
Yeah.
term where, yes, I have
It's like
heard
a
of this
thing,
term.
right? So
Yes.
deliberate practice is
Hmm.
like a thing. I don't know where it came from. I'll go and dig into it at some point. But like step one of deliberate practice is slow down. Like what you're describing is deliberate practice. Slow down, step one. Step two, what's your goal? Don't try to learn a complex skill all at once. Step three, chunk it up, break it up into pieces. And then the one that I think that you really hit on is this idea of practice at the edge of your abilities, but don't aim too high and don't aim too low. Like you literally should design a task to fit your level so that it's right on the edge of your abilities, and then you get better by virtue of the fact that you did the task. And you're kind of implying that people aren't slowing down, they're not breaking up tasks, and they're like, hey, you want to make a hello world website? First, we'll start with Kubernetes.
Yeah. But here's a crazy thing. So you went down to deliberate practice. I'm going to counter it with everything good in your life or bad in your life can be described through hip hop or some song somewhere. And what I would like to apply for this one is an Outcast lyric where it goes, "Listen to me now, believe me later on." And that's how I'm going to leave it. It's more of the understand that I'm just sharing this guidance or telling you to run, and we'll figure it out later. But whenever you understand or you can apply my guidance to a problem,
Mm.
then think about what I said rather than just taking what I said as some kind of good advice. Because I'm just telling you, who am I? I'm a random person on the internet. But I don't want to see you fail unless you're bad, and then I don't really care. So recently, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf because I realized this late that on social media, people don't understand nuance.
What?
So on social media now, I'm just going to the things that I'm saying are going to be purposely full of positivity. And here's the crazy thing is that people I didn't realize this that people like the back and forth and the fighting. I don't really like
Yeah, I
that.
never understood that
Um,
either.
but what I do find is that people love positive and people
Mm.
listen and really all I'm trying to do is inspire. I'm trying to inspire others to be the best versions of
Hmm.
themselves. And just to let you know, it was Cujo because I looked
Cujo.
it
You looked
up.
it up? Okay.
Yes, it
Nicely
did.
done.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Hmm.
Formed in 91. I remember because I was in high
Yes.
school.
I'm sorry. A little
Yes, sir.
sidebar. This song got me through a lot.
Really?
It did. It actually, I still think about it now. Just the beat. It makes me feel good whenever I hear that
Yeah.
beat. I'm sorry.
No, you should.
Yeah, it
People should
does.
check it out. I'll put a link to cell therapy in the
Yeah, you should.
yeah. I want to set people up for success. I want someone to take these moments, take these little bits of listen to me nows, and take it out where they're having a driveway moment. Like the goal of this whole podcast is to have a driveway moment. You know what I'm talking about? That you're listening to a podcast or a radio station, you're sitting in the driveway, and you have a moment where you can't get out of the car because you need to absorb it.
Oh, okay. So you want a driveway moment. Let me see here.
I don't want you to artificially create a driveway moment, but I feel like this whole talk is actually become that driveway moment for me because I'm going to go and listen to cell therapy again. I'm going to go and revisit the whole Goodie Mob kind of like set, but I'm also going to think about deliberate practice and I'm going to think about whether or not I am chopping things up in a way that will set me up for success.
So here's how I look at this. I always want to put out the best version of myself wherever I
Mm,
go, and it's not for me. Really, what it is I hope that the best version of myself can inspire someone else to be the best version of themselves, maybe more than one person.
mm,
And then they can go out and inspire others. So I look at myself as basically the seed of positivity and self awareness and progression. And I want the whole world to just go out and try
mm,
and make it better than you got it. And then what I want people to do is turn around, look at yourself, go find someone who doesn't look like you, and go help them because that's actually a big piece of what we're missing out here as well. It's where I see all these black women who are just like, I can't move forward in
mm,
tech. And I know it's not ability. Like sometimes it might be ability because guess what? We have to start from somewhere. But had it not been from this random dude in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1994, giving me a chance on a job, even though I could actually write code at that
mm,
time, just taking a chance on me. And had it not been this random, huge, actually, web hosting company in
mm,
Maryland giving this 20-year-old a chance, I wouldn't be here right now. So it was these random chances that actually got me to where I am right
mm,
now. And I want everyone to do that because best believe there's so much good out here and there's so much money out here and that can lead to you giving people chances so they can live their lives like they want to. And that's what I want. That's all I want in
mm.
tech.
I did a hashtag a couple of months ago where I was doing random nice stuff and I called it Be the Luck. And I think about like the warm introduction when somebody just like hooks you up with like, oh, I know so and so, you should talk to them, and they do it in such a way that they don't actually keep score. Right? It's one thing for me to say, oh, hey, Anna, you should talk to Brian, da, 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 da. And then I'm like, oh, hey, Brian, remember that time that I had you talk to Anna? That I'm keeping track. Rather, the idea of like, I'm just going to introduce as many people as I can to as many people as I know so that they might be the luck for somebody because all those things that you just described that made your career possible and like those sliding door moments where it could have gone either way. Like I remember those too. Like I know the teachers, I know the managers, I know the jobs, I know the moments where I bumped into somebody and I was ready for it and it happened. And if any one of those didn't happen, who knows? I could be Ryan Reynolds.
So let me tell you about one of those right now. So 2 years ago, I was working at a bank and I decided I didn't want to work there anymore. So I talked to this dude named Scott, and he's like, "Well, let me introduce you to such and such." And I got an interview. Things didn't work out. That's cool. But then in my thinking about why that didn't work out, I realized that it wasn't me. It was the
Mm.
position. So what I did is I went and applied for another job that I never would have applied for. That company was
Mm.
Heptio, with the founders of
Mm.
Kubernetes. And I interviewed so well there, they're like, here, just go do what you're going to go do. A year later, so a year ago, VMware bought that company for, I don't know, some stupid amount of money, made those people richer than, they need to be. But, I got a little bit off that. And what I've been doing is realizing that before that, I could pay for myself. I could afford myself. I already own a house. So now what I do is I take that little bit of excess that I have, and I want to give away so many things that I forget what I'm giving things. So a couple months ago, I gave away a whole bunch of oscilloscopes, and hopefully those college kids got good use out of them. And I'm always just looking for little things like that. Like I did some laptops in Africa just because it makes me
Mm.
happy. But here's the thing. I hope that whatever I'm doing to people inspires them to go do something else. And then realizing that it could be random moments. Like when I talked to that dude, Scott, his name was Scott Hanselman, by the way, um, uh, that those little moments where he was trying to do something nice put me in a position where I could do something nice for other people. And I just want everyone to see that it doesn't work like that all the time, but it can work like that frequently if we're actually just giving the best of
Mm.
ourselves. So you're sitting in your driveway now thinking like, man, is this dude deep? Why does he think like this? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I've seen the other side. Like I said before at the beginning of this, I grew up in a blue collar family, and my brothers don't do this. They've seen, from people I know, seen drug addiction, violence, and jail, and that alternative isn't good. I'm not compatible. I'm a little soft. I can't do that. So this is me thanking the world for giving me a chance to do things where I can actually put good on the world. So hopefully it inspires other people to go put good on the world, because if we didn't, we would just stagnate and the rich would be rich and everyone else would be not. And it didn't have to be that way.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I was a tiny footnote in that because that's all just about how, like, I talk about sliding doors, right? If this hadn't happened, would have that happened and that happened and that happened, and how but you paying attention was the steel thread throughout that whole thing. Like you noticing those
So
moments and acting on them, right?
Well, so this will be my final tidbit of
Mm.
advice, and this is the advice that I give to all Black males that I meet. And the only reason I say that is because I understand your
Mm.
struggle, because I am one of you. First of all, ignore the advice where you say you have to be the dumbest person in the room. That works when you have privilege and you have a safety net. When you don't have a safety net, be the smartest person in the room, but don't tell nobody. That's number one. Two, opportunity is rare. So when it comes, be ready. And whenever I say be ready, you need to be able to hop on any opportunity that's going to move you forward. So you got to have a bag of tricks. So like whenever I was telling you about you helping me out and that interview didn't work out right, I was ready. I mean, I was
Mm.
fresh. I was excited. And number three, I tweeted about this morning, or maybe, yeah, it was this morning. Failure is a thing. Get used to
Mm.
it. Don't get comfortable with it, but get used to it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen all the time. Understand that's part of life. Don't let failure drive you away. But also understand that, like an abusive relationship, at some time you have to go. So understand that as well. And that's how I actually get through life. Those three things right there. And that's what I tell people. If you can do these kinds of things, be good, be ready, but know when to leave, uh, you can actually get ahead in the world.
Very cool. Thank you. Those are the formula for becoming a complete developer, as told by Bryan Liles. Thank you for hanging out with me today, sir.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. And just to let you all know, Scott's been trying to get me on this podcast for like 2 years, and
stop.
it finally like worked
I was
out.
like, I was ready and I was hungry, but I don't know. I was ready to walk away. And then I DM'd you and you were like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, you caught me at exactly the right time.
Don't stop. Don't be hungry. And you too can have Bryan on your show.
Right.
All right. This has been another episode of Handsome Minutes, and I'll see you again next week.